Okay.
Oh, okay.
Uh, Till now we have discussed how to implement the API for the design center, right? What the API we designed in the design center, we have provided the implementation. Now, today's session, we discuss about the mole flows, what, how it start, where it start, what each of these main connector, right? First, let's start with the basic component, basic connector. Now, before we go for this, first go cover the theoretical part. Right? Now, let's create with a new project. To create a new project, we see in this, go to file menu, click new and mole project. You can give anything, right? Just see the name, my first mole application. This you can give. So here now we are creating the application itself in the AnyPoint Studio. Now we are not going to import any file from download from the RAML from the design center, or not importing from the local, or not importing from the published API. Just we in the studio itself we are creating this project. Let's once you give the project name, let's click on the finish. Then it start loading, downloading your project. Let's wait for some time. It gets stuck here. Okay, now it is created. Now you see this, we call this as a canvas. This is the main canvas where we are going to create the mul flows. Okay, now before we go to that mul flow creating, right, let's discuss about so one point here. As we seen yesterday, we have some issues, right? When we are starting the AnyPoint Studio, we have some issues that, like saying that services are not starting, right? Go to Windows and preferences and search for that tooling, right? Instead of struggling in between, just check the status of this, right? See, studio services are not running. Let's get restart the studio services and wait for a couple of seconds. It automatically restart our studio services and make it available for the applications. Now you could see the status, studio services are now running. Now, what is the first step here to create any flow? First, we need something to start the flow. What is the thing to start a flow? Right? We need to have a connector. Anything in the in AnyPoint Studio is all our connectors components. So first we have to start the flow with connector. What is that connector? Is called HTTP listener. What is the listener? We discuss more about the listener. Let's drag this thing, listener, HTTP listener. See, this is the listener. HTTP listener is also a connector which provides the most practical way to listen for HTTP request. As we see, that's right. Now, this once you design, once you complete your flow, then you have to send some data, right? Some request for HTTP, right? All these are HTTP requests only. So who will accept this HTTP request? We need some connector. This connector is called a mul HTTP listener. So this is the first component connector that we have to use in our flow. The connector can be configured to accept any request or to accept only those requests addressed to a specific URI. As what is that we say accept all requests or specific requests. See here, there are certain scenarios, or right, you cannot say that always my URI should accept all the requests, right? We have a specific HTTP methods that what each of this has to be accepted. So you can specify that. You can say you can restrict to only those requests that need to be addressed to specific URL. How you do that? Just go here as a partner. Here by default, right, it shows the list of options here. Go advanced here, then methods allowed. What methods are allowed here? You see this one, methods allowed, get, post, it supports by default. And if you want to what, right, if you want to accept only post request, you can explicitly type it as a post request. Or if you want to accept only get request, you can type get request. If you leave it blank, then it will support both. So this is how this will work. You can choose what methods the connector accept, get, post, board, delete, everything. What methods you are performing on this, right? Mostly the when the connector, this listener start, right? Most probably this is get or post. There is no direct get, sorry, delete, update. So this is the primary point and initial point. So an HTTP listener consume this an HTTP request and offers its content as a connect message. This listener is a simple request response consumer, which means that a response must be written here, right? Once you send that request, right, what you are expecting to, right, you are expecting some response after executing certain from, means this has to return a response here. See here, we have a option called response here. This response is two parts. One is success response. Once you return the response, right, this will be sent as a payload. And you see one more response called as a error response. As we see discussed yesterday also, right, here it will retrieve the error responses, right? This by default, they will give the error dot description. Here you can give your custom message also, right? Error dot description or error dot type, no matter what you can, right? Mul provide the default error handling mechanism. From that, you can use your custom message. So that when do how do you use this custom message, we will see in detail about exception handling session. Okay, let's go back to the main point. What we are discussing is today's session is all about to create the flows. Now this again simple, uh, it's accept a request, right? So once you create a listener, then it needs something to listen, right? On which host, what is the port that I need to accept? Say everything request response happens through a host port and the context path. So this is the combination, right? What is required for us? We require host, port, and a context path. How it looks here? Is it like a HTTP? Because this is accepting the request to HTTP. And what we are saying that host can be a local host. Right now we are working with the local system and it needs some port. By default, it gives 8081. You can change it to something else, right? 8888 or 9999, anything. And it needs some context path. So we are designing a flow, so that flow accept all the requests through some context path, something like APIs. Last, if you are working, your flow is all about to uh, perform CRUD operations or to create flows related to employee or student, that you can give it as a context. So now it is my student is a context. Or if you are working with the employee data, this is employees, then your endpoints will start from here. Now, this is how it will be structured. This is the combination of protocol, host, port, and the context. This is how this URI will be built. Now let's start here. Let's discuss what we discussed. Say first, the moment you use this HTTP listener connector, right? As we discussed, it expect first protocol host also, right? How you do that? By default, you could see this drop down is blank. It say create a new configuration. How you create this new configuration? Just click on the plus mark, which means it is expecting to add a new one. By default, this will come with the HTTP protocol, right? So in local, we cannot use HTTPS, that's required SSL certificate installation, so on, so on, that read some extra things that you cannot do it in local, right? So we go with HTTP, which is a default, and the host also, default host is 0.0.0.0 is nothing but a local host. All interfaces, which is a local host, you can choose local host also, but just leave like that. Now you see this, as I told, right, it comes with the default port as 8081. Now you can change it to any port as you required. Okay, before adding that, let's see this test connection. Why do you want to this test connection is in your application, right, in your flow, if you have already used this port, right, then it will not allow you to configure the same port in another XML file, right? For the sake of this, instead of struggling later, right, let's have this test connection before you move ahead. It will help you, right, to save you time later. Again, you will struggle that where it went wrong, then it is saying when, right, your flow, first of all, the application will not run that. But anyway, this checkpoint is needed. Sorry, it is taking time to test this as the system slowness. Okay. Okay, let's just cancel and try once more. Okay, no problem. Okay, it is taking time as due to some network issue. Anyway, this will be is the first port and the first application that we have used. There is no um, other application using the same port, so nothing to worry. Now, as told, right, it needs some path, right, to invoke. What path you can use, right? Simple, or we can give anything. Test app, this is the path which we have to use to invoke the particular flow. Now, what is the next step you need? You have to have at least one mul event. I mean, this flow has to process one event. You have to have one, at least one thing, one component to be added to start your mul application. Without that, it will not start. Let's see that, right? If you try to run the application, right, it will never come up because there is nothing to do it here, right? This guy, HTTP listener, is expecting something to proceed. If this guy doesn't have anything, then how and why this guy has to come up? What he do then when he bring up the application, right? If you take the request, then what he do? There is nothing. There is no other step to go ahead. So this HTTP listener cannot do anything. So it will not come up, bring up your application. It will not start at all, right? You say wait for some time and see this, see what's happening. Say there is error, right? You could see the details, right? There was an error running built on project. What is that error? You see this clearly here, right? See, the content of the element flow is not complete. Means to complete the flow, you should have at least one component to be added, either simple logger or in transformer, anything. Should be associated with one of the component. So that is the reason this is not coming up. Now let's add this logger. Say as a best practice, right? In real-time scenarios, you should always go with the logger starting to see whether you have sent the request and the request is received successfully, and to print that what data you are sending. Suppose if you are sending the transaction ID or there's some payload, small amount of payload that need to be displayed in the logger, or you can simply use a generic message here also saying the flow XYZ flow has been started, anything, right? So that is the reason you have to add a logger. This will also help you to trace your program, to troubleshoot your flow. If something goes wrong, where it started and where it ended. It is not only at the beginning, in between the flows and the end of the flows, right? Going forward, we will cover how to use this logger, when to use this logger, what we can give in the logger. Right now, we'll just start with a simple message. Right? We see that, see, my sample flow started simple message. Now, okay, this is just started with the simple message. Now, what we do with the next step, if we want to print something, right? What is that something? You set something and accept something. Where to set something, right? You have that transformers or types of transformers, variable and set payload. You see, set payload means you are trying to set the payload. You are trying to set some data here. Let's use this component. Sorry, it is going up. Okay, this set payload. You see, you are trying to set something. That payload sets a display name is payload. What value you are trying to set? I am saying set payload. Hello, welcome to the MuleSoft application. Now, this is what assume I am not. I'm assume I'm sending this data from the outside of the application or your testing tool. Instead, we are directly taking it here to see how this flow is executing. Then after you set the payload, then if you want to send this and want to display this in another component, then how do you use that one? Use drag the transform message. So this transform message is the one, right, which will help you to transform the incoming message to your expected format. For example, if the incoming message is coming as Java, you can convert to XML, JSON, CSV, and so on, right? That we will discuss more about in this upcoming sessions when we discuss data wave expression language. Now you could see here by default this will come as application slash Java. Now you are expecting to convert this to JSON, then you simply can give slash JSON, and what you are expecting, whatever the payload it is coming, right, that payload has to be displayed it here just as is, and I'm not going to change anything. Now let's start this simple application and see how we see that response. Here, one thing you remember that this payload is nothing but it's not confusion. Payload is something you are sending, and payload that you are sending as a response also a payload means either it is going inside or outside. It is in the form of payload only. Well, you are posting the data to create a resource where you are getting the response after executing a certain API or a resource, right? That is coming as a part of payload. Using that payload, you can play according to your requirement. Either you can transform that payload to some other format, or if you want to extract the values from that payload, right, then you can extract some of the content from the payload. You can extract however you want, right, you can do. But first thing, one thing you have to always keep in mind, when you are creating a flow, you have to think that what exactly you are trying to do. Hence you have to be ready with the requirement, right? If you are doing something, then what is the purpose of doing that, right? How you do that things, then what is your requirement, and according to the requirement, right, you have to create the flow. What you have to understand the context of the requirement, what you are trying to, you are fetching the data, or you are, right, just creating a resource, or you are getting the resource, or it is a sample flow, right? How it is, right? You have to be clear with the requirement, then you start designing these flows. How to start designing the flows, that also you have to plan what is required to complete my flow, where it starts, and what connectors are required here, what components are needed for me. Then once you add a components, right, then is it is a component or it is a connector, right? For example, if it is a database, if you are working with a database, so for this database, what exactly I need a database connector. Once you have a database connector, right, using that connector, how do I connect to that database system? Then I need something. What is that something is called database details. So how you configure that DB details, then right, then what you do after the execution of that connector, once it bring the data, what you do with that data, you are trying to do something, what you is that next action, what you want or what you are expecting as after execution of that connector, then you are trying to display the data to client, or you are sending the data to some external source. So that's why first we have to plan how it is, how we are going to design our flow, that we will cover in the next step. Okay, let's now see this deployed. Let's go to the postman and open the postman. This is the best tool that is used for API testing. As I told you in the previous session, it contains everything that is needed to test our APIs, like the input parameters, what input parameters are needed, or there are different number of different types of input parameters like query params, headers, body, right, path param, so on. Let's see this. Once it is loaded, you could see the actual thing. Just wait for a while and it is until it gets loaded. Okay, now its postman is ready here. As you could see here, how it looks, right? It it comes with the default like this. It does not have anything. Then you could see, as told you, params, that query params, and if you want to have a authorization, right? That you have number of options available, like API key, or you were saying no authentication, bearer token, JWT bearer, basic authentication, and so on. So you can send this as a part of header. Then this headers, right? If you have a client ID, client secret that is needed to send as a part of headers, right? You can have like this. And also there are additional fields like transaction ID, date, user ID, so on, depending on our design. And body, right? In body can say, if you expect you don't want to send anything, say select none. And if you want to post the form data, you have to choose this. And if you are sending the raw data, means it is a plain text, right? You can select. And if select the JSON format, text, the raw data is, or JavaScript or HTML, XML, you select according to that format it supports. Okay, now our application is deployed. Now what we are trying to do, now we are trying to check the sample form. So let's say get now, as the it is the combination of three things like HTTP means it's a protocol, and the host port. What is the port we given? 8888, and the context is test app. You could say, hello, welcome to the MuleSoft application. We have not done anything. We have not posted anything here. We just set the payload and retrieving that payload and displaying it as a part of output message. Now now we see the next step. We see that instead of setting the payload here, I send this payload from outside, means from my testing. So just remove it from here and delete that. Now if you delete that, say it is expecting to display some payload. So how do you do that? It has to be come from somewhere. From where it has to? It has to come from the listener. This listener will post that data. So that is called as a payload. Okay, let's save this application. Once you save the application, this server will get started automatically. You no need to redeploy this one. See, once you just see, it is rebuilding that one. You could see the percentage, right? If your system having more speed, right, for 16 GB and all, then this runs quite faster. As my system have only 8 GB, right? It takes some time to run the applications. Okay, be patient. From next onwards, we will fix these issues without any delay. We can move fast. Okay, now you could say successfully started. Now here I am posting this data. I can see a simple text message and send the request. See, again, you got this. It is the simple text format. Again, suppose if you expect this JSON response, means JSON, if you are posting the data in the form of JSON, that same payload you could see, say JSON, right? Nothing. It's like this, you can send any amount of data here. You can send the JSON format is like this. So you know the JSON format is a key value pair, right? I am sending name, right? Name. So what is this name, right? You can say MuleSoft. What you are sending, you are expecting the same thing as a response, because we are not doing anything here. We are not performing any logics here. Whatever the data we are posting, and same thing we are just displaying here. You could see this one. I am posting name MuleSoft. The same thing is coming back and displaying me as output, as a response, right? If something goes wrong here, right, then there is a guy called exception, right? Error response as a part of responses, as I showed you right at the beginning, right? This error response and show the error description. Yeah. So this is how the sample flow you can create that, like that. Depending on your flow requirement, you have to use the corresponding components, connectors, right? Let's discuss about this HTTP request. So this is one of the connector. So like listener, we have HTTP request also. What this request is, this also take the request and process the request and send the response back. But what is the use of HTTP listener and the requester? We use this listener when you are the functionality provider. That is, someone else is going to call your flow over HTTP. Means someone is this one. This someone is calling your flow over HTTP. If someone is calling your flow from where? From the HTTP. Then you use for HTTP listener. This is used to send a source in the flow, right? Then if you want to call another HTTP URL inside your flow. For example, right, this case, right, from here, you want to call another API, or it is maybe in the same flow, or it may be in the different application, or in the same application, no matter where it is. If you want to call another HTTP URL inside from where inside your flow, then you can use HTTP connector like this. Means from the initial request will come here, and this go here, and based on the URL that you have provided here, then it will connect to that URL and get some data, and means consuming. And if you want to consume any APIs from within the flow, from your flow, then you can use HTTP request. So that is the difference of listener and the requester. Okay, hope you are clear the difference between the listener and the requester. Now in the next 40 minutes, right, we will see, we'll create flows to perform CRUD operations on employee object, right, employee database. That's now, let's create and delete this one as it's not needed anymore. Okay, now we will start with the new application. From the new application, we will see that, right, what we could see in this next session, we see that creating a new application and create 4 or 5 different flows. Each flow will perform a specific task. One flow, first flow will be to get all the data, all the employees data, all employees records from the database. And second flow is to create a employee record, to create a resource. Then next we'll update the existing record, and we'll delete it, and we can get record by based on the ID we are supplying as a part of input. Okay, right now, next, as we see, we start with the employee. Okay, you can say create a new project here, employee application, right? Employee application, right? This is a project name. As I told you, right, Here we are not going to do anything. We are not going to download from the design center or from local or from the published APIs. Just give the project name, click finish, nothing. It it start the project. How it start the project? Say based on the right, it needs some structure, hierarchy, right? How it looks, that's as a mapping project, right? Like source, web, and any dependencies. That's it comes with the minimum HTTP model because it at least it perform right at beginning at first it should accept HTTP request. That is the reason by default you could say this it will add HTTP model. You could see here these models are there, right? Here why what models you are adding, say that models it will load and available in your project. Now this socket is not required, so remove this model. I'm removing here. The moment you remove here means you are in this current project scope. So this mul palette is with the current scope, right? See here, it is removed from here. The moment you remove from here, this will also remove from here. By mistake, if you try to remove this also, right, then your application will not start, because to start the application, as we seen, right, to start a mul application, we should have at least one of the model exist in our project. Otherwise, it will not run. And if you try to, right, for example, if you already created a flow and if you remove this from here, right, your project will not start because the flow is expecting the HTTP support. HTTP listener is there. So if you don't have this model support, right, it doesn't know what it has to, how it has to start. So that is the reason, right? This must be required in our project. So please always keep in mind, don't add unnecessary models here. If you keep dragging, dropping and here, right, and some people do not know that. So for shortcuts, they are thinking that it will be available as a shortcut, but this is not as a shortcuts. Anything that is under favorites is the most frequently used things that you can add it here. How you add it here, right? Just go here, core model. If you are using most frequently set variable payload, add something, then say add to favorite. See this set variable is there. You just come here and see it is there. And set payload and flow reference. There are other things which we are frequently using in our flows. First thing, best example or best most frequently used, right, error handling is the one we are using. So let's add to a favorites and error continue, error propagate, and also mostly choice router, scatter gather, and next thing flow, subflow. So like these are the most commonly used components. Next, see, you could see as I told that there are transformers. All these transformers are remove variable, set payload, and set variable. All these called are the fall under the category of transformers. You could see it is by category by scope, asynchronous, cache, flow, for each,
Excuse me.
parallel. Sorry,
Hello.
yeah,
Sir, once you explain that scatter gather and router, that one once you explain and
here,
you can send that one. Scatter gather.
scatter gather.
We don't know that one. Uh,
Say this we will cover the state.
route. Hmm.
See
Is
here it
there
is
any
there.
theory part like that?
Yeah, see
Okay.
here to add this, right click, add to favorites.
Okay.
Whichever,
When we are
yeah, whichever the
using
component you need, you just go there,
that
select and just tell me. You clear?
okay. When
See,
we are using that scatter gather,